The Empire had conquered 17 star systems before they turned their hungry eyes toward Earth. Their warships darkened the skies of countless worlds. Their soldiers numbered in the billions. No species had ever successfully resisted them for more than 3 planetary rotations. They expected Earth to fall within hours. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on his viewing screen. His scaled face showed no emotion as he studied the primitive world below. The humans had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Their technology was centuries behind the standard. This conquest would be simple, routine, and utterly boring. "Begin the invasion," commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. 200,000 soldiers descended upon Earth in the first wave. They landed in the major population centers across all continents. They expected screaming civilians. They expected immediate surrender. They expected terror and submission. What they got was something entirely different. The 1st Battalion touched down in what the humans call the American Midwest. The soldiers emerged from their landing craft with weapons drawn, ready to accept the surrender of cowering primitives. Instead, they found themselves facing rows of human soldiers standing in perfect formation. The humans wore simple green uniforms. They carried weapons that looked almost comically outdated compared to plasma rifles. Commander Vex led the battalion forward with confidence. He raised his weapon and fired a warning shot into the sky. The sound echoed across the empty fields. The human soldiers did not move. They did not run. They did not even flinch. "Surrender now," Vex shouted through his translator, "and your deaths will be quick." A human officer stepped forward. He was an older man with gray hair and cold eyes. He smiled in a way that made something ancient and primitive stir in Vex's gut. It was a feeling the commander had not experienced in decades of warfare. It was fear. "You should not have come here," the human officer said simply. Then the shooting started. They had expected the human weapons to be ineffective against their advanced armor. They were wrong. The bullets tore through shields with unexpected efficiency. Human soldiers moved with discipline and precision that the Empire had never witnessed in a pre-spacefaring species. They did not panic. They did not retreat. They fought with a cold, calculated fury that shocked every who survived the first 5 minutes. Across the planet, similar scenes unfolded. In the frozen wastes of Russia, forces found themselves ambushed by soldiers who seemed immune to the killing cold. In the jungles of South America, entire battalions vanished without a trace, picked off one by enemies they never saw. In the deserts of Africa and the Middle East, the invaders learned that humans had been fighting each other in these environments for thousands of years and had perfected the art of desert warfare. Admiral watched the casualty reports flooding his command center with growing disbelief. In the first hour alone, they had lost 15,000 soldiers. By the end of the first day, that number had grown to 60,000. The humans showed no signs of surrendering. If anything, their resistance seemed to be growing stronger. "How is this possible?" demanded. "They are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours." His science officer, a nervous female named, studied the data with trembling claws. "Admiral, their weapons may be primitive, but they are extremely effective at killing. More importantly, their soldiers demonstrate psychological resilience far beyond any species in our records. They do not surrender. They do not break. Even when facing certain death, they continue fighting." Ordered more troops to the surface. He ordered orbital bombardments of military installations. He unleashed chemical weapons and biological agents. The humans adapted. They hid in bunkers. They developed countermeasures. They scattered into the wilderness and continued their resistance through guerrilla tactics that drove commanders to madness. 3 months into the invasion, the Empire had committed over 2 million soldiers to Earth. They had lost nearly 400,000. The humans had suffered terrible casualties as well, but for every human who fell, 3 more seemed to rise up to take their place. Civilians picked up weapons and fought alongside soldiers. Children carried messages through enemy lines. Old men and women manufactured ammunition in hidden factories. The Empire had never seen anything like it. But the truly terrifying part was yet to come. It started with whispers among the troops. Soldiers spoke of enemies who could not be seen, who struck without warning and vanished like smoke. Entire outposts would be found with every soldier dead, yet surveillance systems showed nothing. No movement, no attackers, just death appearing out of nowhere. Commander Vex, who had somehow survived the initial assault, was stationed at a forward operating base in what the humans called Europe. One night, he woke to find 3 of his guards dead outside his quarters. Their throats had been cut with surgical precision. There were no footprints in the mud, no signs of struggle, no evidence of any attacker at all. Then the messages started appearing. Officers would wake to find human words carved into the walls of their quarters. "We are watching. You will never sleep safely again. The ghosts are coming." The psychological impact was devastating. Soldiers refused to sleep. Officers became paranoid, shooting at shadows. Some went completely mad. Admiral demanded answers. His intelligence officers investigated. What they discovered chilled the blood of every who learned the truth. The humans called them by many names: special forces, black operations, covert units. But the one name that stuck in minds was the one that seemed most accurate: ghost units. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were humans who had been trained to become invisible. They could move through any terrain without leaving a trace. They could kill without making a sound. They could infiltrate the most heavily guarded installations and disappear before anyone knew they had been there. They were the shadows given form, the darkness given purpose. The ghost units had been operating behind lines from the very beginning of the invasion. They had been gathering intelligence, assassinating key officers, and sabotaging equipment. They had been watching, learning, and waiting. Now they were ready to show the Empire exactly what they could do. Operation Silent Storm began on a night that No would ever forget. In a single coordinated strike, ghost units hit 17 command centers across the planet. They killed 47 high-ranking officers, including 3 generals. They destroyed communication networks, power stations, and ammunition depots. They freed thousands of human prisoners from detention facilities. They accomplished all of this without losing a single operative. Admiral stood in his command center, watching his invasion fall apart in real time. Reports flooded in from every continent. Chaos, confusion, death. His forces were being systematically dismantled by enemies they could not see, could not track, and could not stop. The ghost units did not fight like normal soldiers. They did not hold territory or engage in direct combat. They simply appeared, killed, and vanished. They targeted the things that an army needed to function: leadership, communication, supplies, morale. They understood that war was not just about killing the enemy. It was about breaking their will to fight. And the will was breaking. Soldiers began refusing orders to leave their fortified positions. Officers begged for evacuation from a planet they now considered cursed. Even the most hardened veterans spoke of the ghost units with fear in their voices. How do you fight an enemy you cannot see? How do you defend against an attack you cannot predict? How do you win a war against opponents who seem to be everywhere and nowhere at once? 6 months into the invasion, Admiral made a decision that had never been made in the history of the Empire. He ordered a retreat. The withdrawal was a disaster. Ghost units harassed the retreating forces at every step. Supply lines were cut. Evacuation ships were sabotaged on the ground. Thousands of soldiers were left behind as commanders prioritized their own escape. By the time the last ship lifted off from Earth's surface, the invasion force had suffered over 60% casualties. The news of the defeat spread through the Empire like a plague. They had been beaten by a primitive species on a single backwater planet. They had been defeated not by superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but by the sheer, stubborn, terrifying will of humanity to survive. But the true horror came in the months that followed. Commanders who had participated in the Earth invasion began dying, not in battle, not from disease. They died in their homes, in their offices, in the heart of the most secure facilities in the Empire. Each death was accompanied by a message, a simple phrase in the human language that needed no translation. The ghosts remember. Admiral was found dead in his private quarters on the. His door had been locked from the inside. His security systems showed no intrusion. His guards had heard nothing. The only sign that anything unusual had occurred was a small symbol carved into the wall above his body. It was a human symbol, a skull with crossed bones beneath it. The Empire launched a massive investigation. They searched every ship that had returned from Earth. They interrogated every soldier who had survived the invasion. They found nothing. No evidence of human infiltration. No sign of how the assassins had traveled across light years of space to reach the. But the deaths continued. The Council, the ruling body of the Empire, met in emergency session. They debated their options for weeks. Some called for a second invasion of Earth with even greater force. Others argued for the complete destruction of the planet through orbital bombardment. But in the end, they chose a third option. Peace. The Empire sent diplomats to Earth with an offer of formal treaty. No more invasions, no more hostility, full recognition of human sovereignty and territorial rights. In exchange, the humans would call off their ghosts. The human response was simple and terrifying. They would accept the peace, but the ghosts would always be watching. If the Empire ever threatened Earth or any of its allies again, the ghosts would return. And next time, they would not stop with the military commanders. The treaty was signed. The Empire from the entire sector of space surrounding Earth. They placed warnings on their star maps marking the region as forbidden. They taught their children to fear the humans, and they never, ever forgot about the ghosts. In the centuries that followed, humanity spread across the stars. They built colonies on distant worlds. They formed alliances with other species. They became one of the great powers of the galaxy. Other empires learned from the example. They approached humanity with respect, with caution, and with the certain knowledge that somewhere in the shadows, the ghosts were watching. Because the universe had learned an important lesson about the species from the small blue planet called Earth. Their armies were powerful. Their soldiers were brave. Their determination was unbreakable. But it was the ghosts who truly made humanity terrifying. The ones who could not be seen. The ones who could not be stopped. The ones who made even the mightiest empires tremble in fear. Earth's army had terrified the aliens, but the ghost units had changed everything. They had taught the galaxy that humanity would never be conquered, never be enslaved, never be destroyed. Because no matter how powerful the enemy, the ghosts would always be there. Watching, waiting, ready to remind the universe that some species were simply too dangerous to provoke. And in the darkness between the stars, the ghosts continued their silent vigil, forever watchful, forever ready, forever terrifying.